Policy responses to bolster America's reputation, Day 1 and First 100 Days actions. These policy priorities will send a strong signal to both our friends and adversaries that the United States is once again ready to be the indispensable nation in securing global prosperity and stability. Restore all sanctions tariffs on Russia. Increase military aid and economic aid support to Ukraine. The current administration has eased sanctions imposed on Russia for its invasion of Ukraine, thereby reducing pressure on Moscow to withdraw and weakening the U.S. commitment to help our allies provide for our mutual collective defense against Russian aggression. The current administration has bullied and threatened Denmark, a close ally, to give up control of Greenland, an autonomous part of Denmark. This has severely damaged relations with all U.S. European allies. A new administration shall enter into formal talks with Denmark and Greenland with the goal of reaching a binding agreement that renounces any U.S. territorial claim to Greenland and shall apologize on behalf of the U.S. people while directing all U.S. government entities to cease any planning to pressure Denmark or Greenland. The current administration made broad threats that Canada should join the U.S., i.e., as the 51st state, and it has met with Canadian separatists from Alberta. A new administration shall enter into formal talks with Canada with the goal of reaching a formal agreement stating that the U.S. has no claim to Canadian territory and shall apologize on behalf of the American people while directing all U.S. government entities to cease all related activities. As part of a larger executive order EO 14W172, restoring names that honor American greatness, the current administration renamed the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. The designation of Gulf of America shall return to the Gulf of Mexico, and the administration shall direct all government agencies and encourage private companies to comply. Additionally, armed forces bases will no longer be named for Confederates. Eliminate all restrictions on foreign travel, visas, green cards imposed between 20 January 2025 and 20 January 2029. The current administration has enforced a variety of different visa bans on over 3 dozen countries, reflecting its draconian and racist immigration policy. Beyond harming various sectors of U.S. society, e.g., healthcare, it has severely damaged America's reputation and soft power. The new administration shall immediately restore all visa entry rules processes to their status pre-January 20th, 2025. In concert with the broader immigration policy, cease deportations of nonviolent long-term residents and asylum seekers. Conduct a 30 to 90-day review of people deported for legality. Return those who were wrongfully deported under the current administration while reviving and expanding the Interagency Task Force on the Reunification of Families. The current administration's immigration policy has significantly undermined America's international reputation, especially among the majority of the world that is non-white and is becoming increasingly powerful. Adequately fund the immigration court system, including hiring additional immigration judges at the Executive Office for Immigration Review, while continuing to use prosecutorial discretion to administratively close low-priority cases. This builds on Step 8 of Project 2029's Immigration Reform Brief, which directs ICE attorneys to close or dismiss cases involving longtime residents who pose no threat and calls on Congress to fund asylum processing and adjudication. That same commitment must extend to immigration court staffing to meaningfully reduce the backlog. Eliminate America First language from all U.S. government content, from Voice of America to government websites, etc. The America First language used by the current administration is severely damaging America's global reputation and weakening its soft power. To begin to rebuild America's reputation and trust, the new administration must rapidly eliminate the use of this language. Restore usage of the legal term Department of Defense. The new administration shall revoke Executive Order 14347, restoring the United States Department of War. The renaming harms the U.S. international reputation, reinforcing an image of aggression and belligerence, and in some cases has become a term of derision. Issue a proclamation formally revoking the current corollary to the Monroe Doctrine and stating that the Monroe Doctrine is not the policy of the U.S. The Monroe Doctrine and its corollary weaken the image and reputation of the U.S. in Latin America, reinforcing the belief that the U.S. is an imperial aggressor. Issue an executive order directing the Attorney General, in coordination with the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, to catalyze enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, to ensure that the actions of corporations do not run contrary to U.S. values, policy, and law. Revoke NSPM 7, Countering Domestic Terrorism and Organized Political Violence, which wrongfully characterizes domestic opposition to administration policies and social justice and equality advocacy as terrorist threats. The current administration is seeking to designate its political and ideological opponents as national security threats, a direct threat to democracy. In addition, there shall be a thorough review of the use of terrorist group designation, which has increasingly been used as a route to punish foreign adversaries in general. This is a misuse of the designation and associated powers, and it dilutes U.S. efforts to counter international terrorists. The designation needs to be returned to its original purpose of focusing on international terrorist groups. Groups designated should be considered based on their actions, not on their political views. Why the package is largely bad. Formal apologies and renunciations to Denmark, Greenland, and Canada project weakness. Greenland has genuine strategic value, Arctic access, military basing, critical minerals. Publicly apologizing for even discussing it signals that pressure or hard bargaining is illegitimate. Adversaries notice when the U.S. self limits and apologizes first. Blanket elimination of all visa travel restrictions imposed 2025 to 2029 without case by case national security review is reckless. Some restrictions were blunt, others targeted real risks. Rolling everything back indiscriminately treats border and visa control as purely racist rather than a mix of security, capacity, and enforcement problems. Ceasing deportations of nonviolent long term residents, plus reviewing and returning some deportees, undercuts deterrence. Nonviolent still includes people who entered or stayed illegally. A broad pause plus returns rewards the violation and signals that enforcement is temporary and reversible. That is the opposite of restoring control. Eliminating America First language from all government content is performative. Prioritizing American interests is not inherently toxic. Scrubbing the phrase treats a legitimate orientation as a reputational pollutant that must be erased. Soft power is not rebuilt by linguistic self censorship. Formally declaring the Monroe Doctrine is no longer U.S. policy abandons a long standing hemispheric principle at the exact moment China and Russia are expanding influence in Latin America. Signaling that the U.S. no longer claims a special interest in its own hemisphere reduces leverage, not prestige. Overall, the list prioritizes signaling, apology, and restoration of pre 2025 norms over leverage, deterrence, and enforcement. It assumes that softer language, fewer restrictions, and public renunciations automatically improve America's reputation and soft power. In reality, reputation with allies and adversaries is shaped more by capability, consistency, and willingness to impose costs than by how carefully the U.S. avoids offending.